Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. Today, we will be presenting on instructional leadership practices and school leaders' self-efficacy. And I'm Julie McBrayer from the Georgia Southern University.
And I'm Summer Pannell from Stephen F. Austin State University.
The purpose of our study was to investigate instructional leadership practices, and we looked at the degree to which these practices predicted leadership self-efficacy of school leaders. We thought it was important with educational reform focused on school accountability that principals must attend to tasks that lead to school improvement. And we wanted to identify such tasks as instructional leadership practices through the lens of self-efficacy to see if that is actually contributing to school improvement.
So as we dug into the literature, we found that leadership determines the success and significance of an organization and is a key component of school improvement. And so there were 6 areas that instructional leadership should focus on. Those were teaching and learning, inspiring teacher belief and achievement of all students, building teacher capacity, commitment to change, providing practical assistance in developing faculty knowledge and instructional skills, and creating school conditions for teacher potential to meet the needs of all students. So Hallinger came up with the first definition of instructional leadership, which was the core responsibilities of principals that contribute to student learning. And he was instrumental in refining this definition in 2013 with Joseph Murphy. And that was an influence process through which leaders identify a direction for the school, motivate staff, and also coordinate school and classroom-based strategies aimed at improvements in teacher and student learning. Improvements in student achievement in school and the school environment can be viewed in the all-encompassing term of school improvement. Also, school improvement leadership is defined as an influence process through which leaders identify a direction for the school, motivate staff, and coordinate an evolving set of strategies towards improvements in teaching and learning again. So leadership self-efficacy is a more specific strand of self-efficacy. In a recent study by us, the presenters, leadership self-efficacy was defined as self-assessment of one's perceived capabilities to organize and implement action required to effectively lead organizational change to achieve a performance outcome. So Hallinger and Murphy created the Principal Instructional Management Rating Scale as a tool to assess instructional leadership. This survey was 71 behavior statements related to instructional leadership, which are further organized into 11 categories. Hallinger reiterated findings that the Principal Instructional Management Rating Scale continues to be an instrument of choice in the area of principal leadership. So Petrideau compiled the School Leader Self-Efficacy Scale. That's an instrument to measure the self-efficacy of school leaders. This survey is composed of 31 statements related to school leadership and self-efficacy and is divided into 8 factors or categories. Petrideau acknowledged the ongoing validation of the SLSES, yet the researchers also revealed the strong link the survey had with leader effectiveness through leadership reflection of his or her capabilities, functions, and efficacy. So the statement of the problem for this study: school improvement is a necessary focus for principals given the amount of influence that they have over student outcomes. Identifying tasks or instructional leadership practices is also a necessary component of school improvement. Understanding instructional leadership practices through leaders' self-efficacy may assist school leaders in identifying areas of strength and areas for improvement to better frame their professional development needs, and to examine leadership self-efficacy as predicted by the instructional leadership practice of school leaders. The purpose of this quantitative study was to investigate instructional leadership practices and the degree to which those practices predict the leadership self-efficacy of school leaders. The significance of this study: investigating instructional leadership practices and the leadership self-efficacy of school leaders, contributing to the professional learning development for current and future leaders regarding instructional leadership practices for improved practice, school improvement, and growth in student achievement, revealing reveal how the instructional leadership practices of school leaders predict leadership self-efficacy, and to examine the relationship between instructional leadership practices and how they predict leadership self-efficacy may help principals attain school improvement.
So we looked at 3 research questions. The first one was, to what degree are instructional leadership practices of school leaders predictive of leadership self-efficacy? Research question 2, to what degree are instructional leadership practices of school leaders related to supervising instruction, coordinating curriculum, and monitoring student progress predictive of leadership self-efficacy? And the last research questions, what differences exist in the leadership self-efficacy of principals versus assistant principals? We used a quantitative cross-sectional and correlational survey design. We utilized a survey, and the participants were 100 principals and assistant principals from public schools in the southeastern United States, spanning 8 school districts and 180 schools. We had a survey instrument. We modified the instrument to be composed of 4 sections. We had demographic questions. We used the Principal Instructional Management Rating Scale, School Leadership Self-Efficacy Scale, and we had open-ended prompts to ascertain anything that was not on the survey that principals or assistant principals thought were important to include. It was an online and anonymous survey using Qualtrics. We had IRB approval. We contacted our participants, invited them to participate in the survey, reminder follow-up, additional follow-up. And we were able to collect our data and analyze it. And from looking at our demographic data, we could see that of those participants who responded, 48% were assistant principals and 52% were principals. You could see that 43% are coming from grades P to 5, 30% are at the high school level, 24% at the middle school level, and then 3% reported as other. We had a significant number of females, which were 64 compared to 36%, which were male. We looked at degree attainment, and 31% of our participants had a doctorate, 50% had an educational specialist, and 14% had a master's degree. So what we did to look at the overarching research question, to what degree are instructional leadership practices of school leaders predictive of leadership, we answered by conducting an ordinary least square regression. And we looked specifically at supervising instruction, coordinating curriculum, and monitoring student progress to see if they were actual predictors of leadership self-efficacy. We looked at the areas, and we found that supervising and evaluating instruction, coordinating curriculum, and monitoring student progress all were significantly predicted the SLSES scores. When we looked at sub-question 1, to what degree are the instructional leadership practices related to supervising instruction, coordinating curriculum, monitoring student progress, we used again, a ordinary least square regression. And what we found was that supervising and evaluating instruction and monitoring student progress significantly predicted the SLSES score. However, the coordinating curriculum was not statistically significant predictor of the SLSES score. We looked at research, the last research question, what differences exist in the leadership self-efficacy of principals versus assistant principals? We conducted an independent sample t-test with administrator type principal or assistant principal. And the independent variable we identified that, and what we found was there was a statistically significant differences in the leadership self-efficacy of principals and assistant principals. And it's suggesting a small approaching median effect size. So there definitely was a difference between those 2 groups. These are just some graphs that you might want to look into further that show some of the specifics in the statistical analysis. And in summary, the findings revealed that supervising and evaluating instruction and monitoring student progress were significant positive predictors of leadership self-efficacy for the entire sample of respondents, whereas coordinating curriculum is only approaching significance. This pattern shifted, however, when the sample was divided between principals and assistant principals. This study helped identify how well school leaders felt they performed in their job with instructional leadership practices in terms of their self-efficacy. It indicated instructional leadership practices of school leaders predict leadership self-efficacy. There is a difference between leadership self-efficacy at the principal level versus the assistant principal level. And the findings showed school leaders feel they are effective in their instructional leadership practices related to supervising and evaluating instruction and monitoring student progress. School leaders are confident and feel effective with supervision and evaluation, likely due to teacher observation responsibilities. We need to continue and strengthen our professional learning related to teacher observation tasks. We feel that school leaders are confident and feel effective in monitoring student progress, likely due to state accountability measures. And again, continue and strengthen professional learning related to monitoring student progress. Coordinated curriculum is important, but not a single element, a statistically significant predictor of leadership efficacy. So we need to develop and provide mechanisms for coordinating curriculum.
So our implications for practice. Educational leaders and key constituents may consider these results for reflection on practice, as well as planning professional learning for skill development to attain skill improvement. Our future research recommendations are to expand the research to include factors influenced by other geographic reference points, and also to include other types of schools. Broaden the research to include other dimensions of instructional leadership practices, such as defining the school's mission and promoting a positive learning climate, and also to focus the research to include the study, to include the differences within the instructional leadership practices of principals and APs as related to leadership self-efficacy.
And you can see our references, and we appreciate everyone coming. Thank you.